Hello, tribe, and welcome to this week's Soul Sense Empowerment episode. Last week, we talked about inner dialogue or inner conversations, how the way you speak to yourself shapes your confidence, your decisions, your reality, your mental and emotional well-being. And I promised I would go deeper.
This is Soul Sense Empowerment by Estar. Heal your mind and body, elevate your spirit, empower you.
Before we go any further into that conversation, there's something foundational that I feel we need to discuss first, and that is the inner critic and self-compassion. But first things first, I did a little survey asking people what they thought the inner critic was. Some people said it was that little voice in your head. Others said it was intuition. Others said, oh, that's the devil on your shoulder, isn't it? There is some truth in some of that. The inner critic, or that inner voice of doubt, is not the same as intuition or gut feeling. Gut feeling or instinct is intuition and is always right. I like to call it the voice of God. As Florence Scovel-Shinn taught, Florence Scovel-Shinn was a metaphysical teacher. Prayer is us telephoning God, and intuition is God telephoning back. On the other hand, the inner critic is that voice that is always criticizing and challenging your gut feelings and policing all and any other voices in your head. It has a tendency to confirm all our false beliefs because, as we know, they exist to keep us safe and protect us from shame and pain. The best way to know the difference between the two is that gut feeling or intuition is a feeling, and the inner critic is a voice in your own voice. There's a song we sang in school. Do not be afraid, for I have redeemed you. I've called you by your name, you are mine. The inner critic often stems from fear of not being enough or lovable. This verse affirms our belonging and value, not based on performance, but identity. It brings us back to our divine design, inherently worthy, not broken. The reason I feel it's important to talk about this first is because until you understand why that harsh inner voice exists and how to respond to it with compassion and kindness, your inner dialogue will keep defaulting to fear, shame, and self-doubt. There is a beautiful framework in psychology called internal family systems. It says your inner critic is not your enemy, but a scared part of you, doing its best to protect you from failure, embarrassment, or rejection. However, it is stuck in the past, and your job now in this present moment isn't to banish it, but to reparent it. So in this two-part mini-series, I'm going to show you how to turn your inner critic into a tool for growth and how to build a voice inside you that leads with clarity, not criticism, and it's an ally with your intuition. So we shed light on the inner critic, the loudest voice in your inner dialogue board meetings. And then next week, we talk about how to tame it or calm it and reparent that voice with compassion and kindness. You really don't want to miss this one. And I am so passionate about this because as a mental health practitioner, I've seen cases where some people have such debilitating and intrusive thoughts and very harsh inner critics that they can't say a way out. And in some heart-wrenching cases, resort to taking their own lives. Not because they want to die, but because they don't want to live. Don't get me wrong, I am not trivializing suicide, but research supports this. Self-criticism, a key aspect of the inner critic, is one of the strongest cognitive predictors of suicidal ideation, often more predictable or predictive than depression itself. And the sad reality is that we are not born with this voice. We learn it from society, from parents, from teachers, from friends, from peers. Let me illustrate this with a fictional story. Imagine a 4 or 5-year-old girl. Let's call her Jane. The girl's mother loves her, but constantly criticizes her boyish behavior, not because she doesn't care, but because she's worried Jane won't fit in with societal norms or expectations of how women should be, or even find love. So over time, Jane internalizes this message as something like, parts of me are wrong, I need to change who I am to be acceptable or accepted. And then her inner critic forms as a protective voice, trying to keep her away from shame and rejection. But then, in adulthood, this inner critic becomes a barrier. It holds her back from speaking up, trying new things, or even walking away from toxic relationships or starting new ones, or even changing herself. Of course, we are not judging the mother. She did the best she could with what she knew. She probably was carrying her own pain from somebody else. And most of us don't even realize we have this harsh inner critic because it feels normal. It's been there since we can remember. So something that was once a survival mechanism is now a source of constant pain, stress, low self-esteem, anxiety, emotional pain, burnout, even toxic self-sabotage. And then what do? We ignore it, or we fight it, or try to drown it with perfectionism or a myriad of other sub-personalities within us. We don't need to get rid of our inner critic. We need to learn to talk to it. Think of your inner critic like a scared but loyal dog. It's barking to protect you. You don't need to kill the dog. You need to train it, because without your inner critic, you wouldn't discover and know your inner teacher. That part of you that learns, that grows and pushes forward, not through, but forward. So if you've been living with a loud, harsh inner critic, I want you to know you're not broken. You're not weak. You've just had one voice with the volume too high for too long. And maybe no one ever showed you or told you that you had the power to shift it. Today, though, you took the first step, awareness. You've started to pull the curtains back and ask, who is really talking to me, and why, and for what purpose? So, in part 2, we are going to go even deeper. I'll show you how to talk to your inner critic, how to transform it from a bully into a guide, and how to build a voice inside you that leads with clarity, not fear. You can even name it. I call mine Olivia. So if anything from this video hit home, drop it in the comments. Let's talk about it, because the moment we name the inner critic, we take some of its power away. Trust me. So don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on part 2. This movement is all about empowerment and empowering each other. In gratitude, bye for now.